It's it's like a small innovation, but it makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
So I assume we're recording because it just said that. There it is. Cool. So I don't think we have a full agenda, but it's a meaningful one. So I'll call, which one of you is taking minutes? And I apologize.
It's my turn.
Cool. Thank you, Gail.
Yep.
So I'll call us to order at 7:05. I, I'll just say I was on a call today with someone from DOER about climate stuff, and there was a working group that he leads, and I was inquiring about watching, and he said, well, it's public meetings. You can come, but just be aware, we never get any publics. You might be the only one. And I'm like, I know that. Not a problem. So I don't see any public, so I guess we won't
have no
any
public.
comment.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think Gail was there and I was there, but just sort of to go over, it was great that all three climate leader community warrant articles passed. I think I did a pretty good job of pretending that I was you, Nate.
Yes.
The specialized opt-in code was, I was a little bit worried that if I got a hard question, I might, stumble a little bit, but it worked out well. And I would have liked, I don't know why I didn't, well, I didn't see the warrant until much later, but we did it in reverse order of what I think we should have done. Like it should have been the decarbonization resolution to set the stage and then the other two, but we sort of went zero emissions to specialized opt-in code to decarbonization. So by the time we got to that, there's not much to argue for. But it went well, I think. Gail, what was your sense?
Yeah, it went very well. And your reference to having held the forum, and there were a lot of people at the forum, so I don't think there were any questions at town meeting.
Really?
Yep. So your handout was excellent and referred to. But nobody had any problem, any question. It was just, good to go. And it helps, of course, to say, once we get this status, we're eligible for grant applications. People like to hear that. So,
especially in this year.
And you could say we've done these steps. These are what's required. We've done these steps. We've accomplished this much. Here's what we have to go. So, yeah.
That is great.
Well done. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about we've been discussing this for a year and a half. So it's a monumental thing to get here. So all those check marks are done. I think it seems like sort of jumping to the next thing about decarbonization roadmap and all. So Gail, Nate, and Haley and I met with this guy, George, who's a consultant for DOER to help us with the roadmap. So we can discuss that. But I think the one thing I learned that apparently Haley and Nate already knew is that the next application period for climate leader status is December. So by then we'll have, town meeting minutes, certified and all that. So we can sort of prove that, the town has approved those three things. But we got plenty of time for that.
Yeah.
So I think in decarbonization, can I just shift to decarbonization roadmap? Because I think it's our next order of business, both on the agenda, but practically speaking. So we had this meeting with George. It was actually, I'll just say, I was a little surprised that we got approved for the roadmap. What they had extra money or who knows what, but we were in the hopper. So kudos to you guys for getting us, in the queue.
I was also surprised to receive that email message. And this is before town meeting, right?
Right.
Before the votes came in, and I was quite concerned that we would schedule this call about the decarbonization roadmap, and then, ultimately end up, at least for the time being, ineligible for climate leaders. So, yeah, everything aligned. And like you said, not in the order that you would have chosen, but well enough, right?
Yeah, totally.
So what is it we're actually approved for?
Well, you go.
So Gil, you remember we put this application together for a grant in November. We submitted the grant application, and that was for to obtain the services of a consultant
Right,
to help us develop a decarbonization roadmap, which is
right,
one of the requirements for
right,
climate leaders.
right.
And so, we ideally you have already approved um, other elements of your climate leaders checklist, which we had not done. But so we didn't get the initial round of
And that's
uh,
what their response was. You haven't done enough yet, as much as other guys who are getting approved.
that was the vibe. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. But then, yeah, we got an email said, "Hey, you've been approved for this consultancy," and yeah, we had our first call this
Nice.
afternoon, and it was, let's say, fairly high level, but it there was enough traction that we have concrete to-do list, emanating from that. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to pick back up, Michael,
Well,
on.
I think we can, either way, I mean, I can do it, but I think it's a matter of like digging in a little bit. Um,
Mhm.
so I think, Gail, the one thing that this George said, George Voight, I think is his last name. Um, and seems like a nice guy. He has been in North Andover for a few years, and now he's in Delaware, I believe he said. Um, but he's part of a bigger consulting company. So they've done, this is be the third round of roadmaps that they've done. So they sort of learned and perfected and developed
Good.
models and things. So he said that, it usually takes about 3 months to do. And it's a combination. He said DOER likes it to be a collaborative process so that we would do stuff, they would do stuff. But it's really focused on getting data that can then inform the roadmap. So it's supposed to be a practical between now and 2050. How does a town, get to decarbonization, as opposed to like a whole community engagement process. So um, he sent Nate and Haley and I. I'll forward it to you. I just haven't had a chance, unless Nate, you already did this checklist of the data that they need. And the idea, there's sort of two big chunks. The more complex chunk is they look at all the buildings in town. And
Oh,
so
the what? The
buildings,
building. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And so right now they have six, which includes the old town hall, but not the new library. Um, well, it's just because, the new library isn't online yet, so they don't know about it. Um, so I think one of the questions we'll have is like, I was surprised that they actually had the old town hall as using carbon. I mean, I don't think it's heated, and it's not utilized. So
Oh,
that's just sort of a question, like, should it be included or not? But that's sort of a minor point.
yeah.
But the idea is they basically, he said, come up with about 2 pages worth of data on each building. So there's like a narrative, what the use case is and a description about the building, but then there's all the data, so like heating, insulation, structure, what the envelope is, all that, like stuff that one would need to know. And I think what we have to talk about is just how we obtain it. It seems like there's a couple of ways of obtaining that, but we get that to them, and I think it feeds into their, little modeling, and then presumably after their modeling, we have a conversation. Um,
But this goes back to our conversation with the buildings committee.
well,
It
yeah,
does.
it's exactly. So that came up, so what I told him was we brought the buildings committee in, I don't know, about a year ago, and they've done an inventory on their own. And so I think part of it is I think we should engage the building committee at this point and say, hey, we need this data. Can we partner with you to sort of collect it and get it to DOER? The thing that they offered, which is something that we said we would talk about tonight, is they can get we can get site visits from one of their assessors to come and sort of look at all the six buildings and do a professional assessment through the DOER lens. And so, I mean, jumping into it, my sense is we should just do both. Like we should
Yeah.
get as much data as we can from the buildings committee, and then they're going to pay for it to have someone come on site and look at all our buildings. That would be great.
And I should think that the buildings committee would welcome having that from a professional point of view as a check of their own data
Yeah, and
processes.
they're going to be looking at through a different lens. I mean, like the example he gave, which is down the road. I mean, I think something Nate and I both about was try to be strategic about how we go between here and 2050 in terms of decarbonizing. But the example he gave is, well, if you've got a boiler in the school and there's 10 years more of life, you don't want to replace the boiler because you still got 10 years of life.
Right.
And in some regards, that makes a lot of sense, but you sort of have to look at it in the big picture of, what else is happening in 10 years? And, do you want to start moving forward on some things? And is this an easy win or not? Like there's a lot of, but I'm guessing the buildings committee just sort of did a inventory of what we've got, not necessarily from a decarbonization lens. So that would be interesting. But it seems like we got resources where we didn't have resources.
One of the things they pointed out before, and I've since remarked with Stephen Dalmas, is that particularly in this neck of the woods climate-wise, in the winter, you can have your what you call it, the heat things.
Like heat pumps, air source heat pumps.
Thank you. Yes.
Mini splits.
But the splits, thank you. That's what I need. But the backup with the gas fueled heating system, because the splits don't work as efficiently or as well. In fact, they're energy users instead of energy savers in the winter months.
Well, I think that's that would be one of the questions, depending on the building. Like, do you do air source heat pumps? Do you try to do a ground source if we could, get that set up, and like, what's the planning for that?
Right.
And
Oh, but I have a long way to go to win out geothermal, though.
well, it depends on it depends on the structure, like the school is probably too big, where many splits, but hard to know. Town hall is a little small. I would invest, I don't know. Well, I definitely wouldn't mess with the ground at the fire department. Like there's enough funk going on in the ground that we don't want to be drilling anything down there. But, like, but I think we all option. I mean, the nice thing is everything's on the table, right? And we got 25 years to do some of this stuff. I mean, it seemed like
5 years.
Huh?
I'm just repeating. Yeah, I mean, it's a runway, but it ends with 100%, net zero. So I'm very excited about this process.
We take off speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for ground source heat pumps, you can make them as big as you want.
Oh yeah, UMass has got going to do a huge one.
Yeah.
Building size is not an issue, if I understand.
No, I think it's the cost part. The bigger they are, the more they cost. But so do you guys agree we should, like, in terms of process, engage the building committee to get their data, and then also say, yes, we'll take your technical assistant on-site assessment?
Well, when I was filling out the application in November, I reached out to the building committee because there were places in the application to provide some of this information. And when I learned that we'd won, and I did get, Stephen wrote back and said that he'd have to look into it. For example, like the age of the building and some of these pieces of information that we're going to want. But as soon as I learned that we won the award, I reached back to building committee. Didn't hear anything back. Of course, that's kind of leading up into town meetings, so they might have been busy. I invited them to this afternoon's meeting. I forwarded the invite. Didn't hear back. So I am a little worried that I'm not getting any engagement on this topic. But that being said, I mean, I think the people who are on that committee right now have technical background and expertise. So I don't want to step on their toes around uh, a technical assessment on some of these points, but the state is offering us free information, like information. So I think coordination, like absolutely, we should be coordinating, and I think for more than one reason, like in order to uh, leverage their expertise, the work they've already done, um, but also to kind of off like and make sure they're aware that we have this great opportunity to get some additional. I don't know what they would do. That is the consultants that are supported by the state that is different from what a building inspector could do. That we already maybe have access to. But yeah.
Yeah.
How would you describe the data? I'm thinking about minutes here. The data that that the professional services are going to be gathering.
So window treatments, uh, the heat source, the the maybe the condition of equipment, its age. So I might summarize it as um, relevant uh, building life cycle features that would inform a strategic plan to decarbonize these buildings. Some of that is the actual source of the
Right.
energy, the fossil fuel burning, but then also building envelope
The building itself,
characteristics.
yeah.
Yeah, that would be useful. Yeah, to know
There's
about.
also like from the condition data, because part of it is if you want to decarbonize something, you don't want to invest a lot of money in something that needs repair. So, in terms of the sequencing, it could be that you repair the envelope or you upgrade the envelope before you do the heating component. So part of it is just doing that assessment will help with the timeline and the sequencing.
Yep.
Well, that was like getting any of the grants for the stuff before. We had to do the envelope first before we started looking even at internal
I mean,
measures.
one of the things I was thinking about, which I raised during the conversation, but I've been really frustrated, like with the MVP process, where we couldn't do the solar because we didn't have the specs, right? We talked about that for a lot. But I would love through this process to be able to get, enough data that we could actually leverage other state grants. Because we got an official assessment from someone who DOER says is professional. And maybe we don't have all the T's crossed, but we've got enough to show that we can proceed. So I think that would be helpful. The other thing I would say in terms of the building committee is we need, having their buy-in, so they're thinking along the same lines as we are, and ultimately they're looking out for the building, so they're going to be, and I would think that, we might have to go to capital planning once we have a scoped out kind of plan, but year to year, it should be on their list and be part of their conversation with capital planning. So,
But it was pretty clear with our conversation with Stephen when he came to our meeting that energy was not on their plate, that they weren't even looking at that. So
well, I think that might change.
and your point about the conditions, which underscore the use.
Yeah, I also think that one of the good things is, I mean, Haley was at the meeting this afternoon. I think Haley's going to be much more engaged than Becky was. So,
Okay.
I think in terms of connecting the dots, it's not just two committees sort of playing with each other, but, we'll have a town administrator will hopefully, bridge that communication and support stuff.
Excellent.
So, and the town agreed that we want to go this direction. So, I think just on the buildings committee, I was just looking it up while you talked. I think Frank McGinn is the chair at this point, and
Correct.
Stephen is not. So,
Stephen felt that he was just getting overwhelmed. I mean, too much of his life was being spent on that, and he wanted to pull back.
okay.
He's
Do
still
you
active
think-
in the committee, but he,
Do you think we should have, like, practically speaking, like if we go down this road, try to just have a joint meeting between us and them, just to sort of talk through this a little bit? Or should we just sort of, I mean, I can reach out to Frank, who I've dealt with in other settings, just to let him know, and maybe, I mean, maybe it's just inviting him to our next meeting, but the more of them, the better. It seems like
certainly keep
I
it
agree.
ways and know what we're doing, going on, but I think it's, yeah. So if data gathering was the first task, what was the second?
well, no, so there was two, so there's gather,
There were two buckets.
yeah, the first bucket is buildings, and the second is a vehicle. Which is relatively
Oh,
easy
I see.
because
Okay.
we don't have any electric vehicles at this point, but it was doing, my sense, I don't think he explicitly said this, is doing an inventory of what we've got now in terms of vehicles and function. And then, I mean, it was very comforting to know that, they're being realistic, that if you can't actually get vehicles that do the job, like you were saying, that you can't plow snow with an electric vehicle. So who knows when that's going to happen? It could be 5 years, 10 years, whatever. But just sort of knowing what the inventory is now, and I think just like we do now, um, with capital planning, sort of folding those in, and we can do the fleet vehicles of like the police car and the fire chief and all that kind of stuff. Those are easier. Everything else sort of becomes a big question mark, I think. But those, so it's buildings and cars, I think, are the two buckets.
Right.
Did I remember that correctly, Nate?
I think that's right. Yeah. Um,
So this chunk is labeled update and next step.
Well, I think oh, that was just typo. I mean, I think the next step,
What do you see as the next steps?
I would say, I'll email George and CC you guys tonight and say we're interested in, having site assessment, but we'll also work on the building committee part, because it seems like the more information we can get to the assessors ahead of time, one, they'll be appreciative, and two, they'll be more knowledgeable. So they'll know what they're stepping into. But I think I can communicate that. I can reach out. When you reached out, Nate, to the building committee about getting the grant, did you just send it to whatever the committee address is?
yeah, it's like buildings at, yeah,
Yeah.
off of the town website.
Okay. Yeah. I'll send it to that, but I'll send it to Frank as well because I have his email.
That'd be great.
Just to sort of let him know officially that we had our first meeting with the state, et cetera. So I think those are the first two steps. I haven't had a chance to check in with Haley, but I think that would be the other thing, just to sort of see, where she's at in terms of how much.
He was in that first meeting though with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think now the town meeting has passed, what George said is if it takes 3 months and we're in June now, by mid-September, we should be wrapped up. And so, depending on people's schedules, that may or may not work, but it seems like there's enough time to get that figured out. I have to look. He said it has to get voted on, and it seems like most municipalities, it's the select board. So if that's the case, that would be easy, just to share it with them and get their vote of approval. And then we'll have plenty of time by December to apply. So I think that seems like the next steps. And then, what we do with the building committee and and I don't know, Nate, in terms of your plate, have you gotten a look at the spreadsheet yet?
I have not. Yeah.
So I think that's maybe something for us, just the three of us, to look at the spreadsheet and get a sense of like, he was pretty clear that there's a lot of data that we don't necessarily need, but DOER would like. So there's getting data for the roadmap, and then there's getting data that DOER would sort of like for a statewide analysis of buildings and things like that, which If we could offer it without jumping, doing backflips, that's fine. Um,
Michael, did you forward the spreadsheet to Gail?
I did not.
Okay, I've just done so.
Great, awesome, perfect. Tight ship here. So I think that's the next step, quote unquote. Yeah. Does that make sense?
The first step is,
No, what I just talked, it's next steps. I was just making fun.
okay, send to the spreadsheet, okay.
Yeah. And anything else on that you think that we?
I think that's good. Yeah, that'll keep us busy this month.
Yeah, cool. So in terms of other updates, we got CCA, which, I know the application or the plan got sent to DPU. I'm guessing we will hear and haven't heard yet from Colonial.
That's right. So Colonial's attorney filed on our behalf. And the next step is that DPU will schedule some kind of public hearing. And I mean to write Denise to get a little more information about what that entails, what that's about really. Um, uh, it, so we'll see, but they will reach out to us with information about that next step. And I'm going to meet next week with Haley, either in person or by phone, to walk Haley through sort of the past, present, and future of this effort, so that in case there are any questions about it, especially now that town administrator is getting looped into these these emails and want to make, I guess, yeah, we are on the service list, and will be notified anytime there is movement on the docket.
Okay. Yeah, I think one thing that'd be helpful to know, which I'm sure you'll ask, is like, if it's a public hearing, do we have to show up from the town? Like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What exactly is the audience for that public? Like, really, the audience for that public
This is a
hearing?
pop quiz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say, where is Shutesbury?
But the 120 days are ticking, so
That's
that's
cool.
great. Yeah.
And
So 128 days from our filing, right?
I think
From Colonial's filing.
yes,
Yeah, okay.
that's right. That's right.
And I haven't memorized the flow chart, but assuming it gets approved by DPU, then we sort of get into the substantive discussion of what the product offerings are.
I think that's right.
Cool. We're doing a lot of good work. That's sort of
It's
neat.
an action committee.
It's an action committee.
Yeah, I love it. I don't have an update on EV chargers. I know that Haley reached out to East Coast Renewables, but I don't know like if there's a site visit and stuff, and I didn't get a chance, but I should follow up with her. I think everything is pre and post town meeting, so she might have more bandwidth, especially since this is our first one. So. You haven't heard, neither of you heard anything rumor mill wise about the EV charger stuff?
No, but it is a reminder that just doubling back to the decarbonization roadmap, that was a question that George had asked of us, sort of what the state of our thinking is on EV charging, given how important that is to vehicle decarbonization. So that'll be coming in, at an angle to the larger, roadmap process too. But
Yeah, and figuring out how to sort of you know, like the planning and the implementation that we're doing now, do they intersect and how does that work? Um, and I think the only other thing that I was not on the agenda that I remembered looking at the minutes was there was a conversation that Eric brought up about, you know, the lighting at the school in particular. And I emailed Haley after a meeting just to sort of give her a heads up, but I think if I call her, I'll include that to just sort of find out like where things are at. You know, being that was a planning board bylaw, I'm happy to sort of, if she wants to meet with the school, you know, I can do that, but I
To
don't think
make sure that
that's,
something's actually been done about it, you mean?
well, I think it's to raise the issue and just sort of, you know, like, I don't know if anyone's talked to, you know, the new principal and the new
Yeah,
superintendent to say the lights are on all the time and
right.
really we'd rather it be different. I think, I mean, Nate, you would know better, but my sense is, you know, the principal, she's ending her first year. She's just getting used to the community and the school. So lights are probably not the top of the agenda.
Yeah.
So who's, you know, just on the roadmap thing, who's the maintenance person at the school now? And has that person been around for a while? Oh,
I don't know. Yeah.
okay. We used to have someone who's there forever, you know, who knew everything, but that was a while ago. So presumably he is long gone.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll know soon enough as we dig into this process.
Yes.
So as, before jumping into minutes, is there any other updatey things that we want to share with each other? I didn't get any bites from the town announce about openings, and I mentioned it at town meeting as well. So I think we'll just have to keep hoping. Seemingly there's a lot of openings in town right now.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm sort of surprised that there aren't people who are more interested in the CCA, just from a personal use point of view, but they may think it's, you know, it's a project that's going to happen for them, not that they want to get involved in the making it happen.
yeah.
That's a general sensibility about town government.
Yeah,
It'll happen and I don't want to get
they'll do it.
involved.
Yeah. They're good volunteers.
Exactly.
Mhm.
I think the main selling point is ECAC's a hell of a lot more fun than FinCom. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and, FinCom is just a giant difficult mess, especially this year and next year.
Yeah. We're not in
So
that.
yeah, it's just gonna get ugly. So shall we move on to minutes?
Sure.
Anyone want to move to approve the minutes of April 30th?
Can you move to approve your own minutes? Because
Sure,
I didn't
you
get
love
any,
them.
there were no edits submitted. So I would like to move to approve the minutes of April 30th, 2025.
Gail, you want a second?
Second, indeed.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. Nate, how do you vote?
Aye.
Gail,
Hi.
I'm an aye. Thank you for doing them. And
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, Gail and I are gonna be we're gonna be busy.
Just
So
swapping
we
them
get
off.
some more people.
yeah, I know, really, I feel bad. I know from experience, like, I mean, I could just go through the recording, so maybe I should,
I'm
like, we
happy
don't
to
get,
do it. Yeah, that's
I
fine.
mean, it is sort of nice to
No
have the
worries.
recording, but
Yeah. You have other responsibilities as the chair that I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
Yeah.
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And you'll have the chance to correct minutes if we didn't get stuff exactly straight. So
There you go.
That's true. That's true. Cool. So I mean, let's just look at another next meeting date if that's
yeah,
viable. Um, and I think maybe we should plan it, but then, you know, depending on what happens with building committee, if maybe we want to be flexible, but, Are you guys away anytime in July?
I am out. I'll be away at the beginning and through till the 16th.
Okay.
I'll be out.
So if we did like the 22nd, um,
Could do that.
okay. Gail, does that work for you?
It does.
Okay. Why don't we assume the 22nd at 7 and
Okay.
like,
Okay.
that sounds easy peasy. This is like a well-oiled machine we've got, I gotta just say. Pretty cool.
It is.
Or
We're a
a
good
well
team. We've got it
decarbonized
down.
machine.
Got it down now.
Oh, no.
Okay, so the next meeting is July 22nd. Not spelled that way. 7 p.m.
Great. And hopefully by then, we'll have, we'll have engaged the buildings committee in some regards. Maybe we'll have heard from Colonial. We'll have an update on EV charges because I will have followed up on that. And I think that's probably it. I mean, we got work to do, but we don't have really intense meetings at this point. We just have to keep things on track, which is great. So,
That's great.
cool. Anyone want to move to adjourn?
I will move to adjourn the meeting. Do I need a
I'll
second?
sec. I'll
Nate
second.
seconded? Vote to
Any
adjourn.
discussion? Okay. How you vote, Gail?
Aye.
Hey,
Aye.
and I am an aye. Wow, under an hour. Pretty damn efficient.
We're good.
Yeah, really. Okie
Okay.
dokie. See you all later.
Okay.
Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you all.